Christmas time is here, and if you know me, you know this is my favorite time of year. And just like we did last month with Thanksgiving, December is all things Christmas. And we're starting it off today with Christmas cookies. And the thing that I think of most when I think of Christmas cookies, my favorite cookie from my childhood, are pecan snowballs. This might be actually the one cookie that every kind of culture has a version of. It's called Russian tea cakes, Mexican wedding cookies, pecan snowballs. I think in Spain they call them polvorones or something like that, and so on. And if you kind of look it up, this is kind of one of those cookies that somehow has found its way all over the place, and no one really knows where it came from. But all we know is it's delicious, and we're gonna make it today. So as usual, I got the recipe from my mom's recipe binder, and it's like very, very, very simple to make this recipe. They're nutty. You want them to be sort of melt in your mouth. You're not really baking them to kind of get a color on top. You want the golden brown bottom, a nice kind of set top, and then you're just gonna roll them in powdered sugar, put them in a cookie tin. Santa loves these too because the powdered sugar blends in with the white beard. So, you know, we want to please the family, but we also want to think of the big guy. So let's get right into it. First things first, let's measure things out. And I'll go quickly over how to properly measure flour, just so you know, because there is a right way and a wrong way. So when you're measuring flour, and sometimes this is the biggest problem in whether something comes out dense or properly baked, you never want to pack it with flour. 1 cup of flour is a lightly packed cup of flour, not a packed cup of flour. So what you want to do is just take your spoon and just spoon in the flour. Then with your knife, you're just taking it and then trying to fill in the gaps. And I just had this little bowl to catch it that I could just pour back into the bag. And then I just want to sift this into a bowl. So here we have 2 cups of flour. So then I got a bigger bowl that I'm actually going to sort of put all the cookies together in. And I have 1/3 cup of powdered sugar. I'm sorry, 1/4 cup of powdered sugar. And I just want to sift that as well. So now I have my sugar. Now I just have about 1 cup of pecans that I've already toasted. You want to do that in advance because you want them to fully cool before you make this at all. So I've toasted them just in a dry pan over medium-high heat until they start to kind of brown. I just shut the heat off and then just let them kind of finish toasting without any heat underneath them, just with the residual heat of the pan, and then just let them cool in a bowl. So now these are cool to the touch. I want to chop them super duper fine. And you can use a food processor, a blender, whatever, but I'm going to show you how to do it with my hands. So I got my cup of chopped nuts. I just want to add it to the flour with a pinch of salt, and then just mix that all together. That way sort of all the nuts are nicely incorporated into the flour already. We have 2 sticks or 1 cup of room temp butter that we're gonna add to the sugar. If you don't have a KitchenAid or something like that, you gotta sort of at least have one of these, just if you like baking. It's just gonna make your life so much easier. And it's basically a KitchenAid in your hand. Now I just wanna blend this together until it becomes sort of a creamy mixture. Then I go in with 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And then I'm just gonna gradually stir in the flour. Just want to get all that butter off the sides. I'll use my hands just to scrape that dough. And you can just sort of form it into bowls like that. I'm gonna let this just rest though in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes. So now I've got a baking sheet and I've kind of cut out a piece of parchment paper to fit it. You can use a silk mat, which is sort of like a non-stick kind of pad that you could put on to a baking sheet. But if you don't have that, parchment paper works fine. We're just gonna use, it's like a little cookie scoop, and just get them onto the sheet tray and bake them off. So this recipe makes about 24 cookies. So feel free to double it if you want to make a big batch. Now if you have a warped sheet tray or an old sheet tray, or you don't know what a good sheet tray is, then it's time to upgrade. And in my Amazon store, I have a Nordic ware pan, which is the best. It's like kind of a baker's sheet tray. It doesn't warp. If it does warp, it means that it's just old and you gotta get a new one. But these are the best. I love them. They're big. So into the oven at 350 degrees. The key to these is to not over bake them. We're gonna bake them for like 12 minutes maybe. We don't want them to brown on top. We want there to be a nice golden crust on the bottom, and we want them to sort of be melt in the mouth when they're done and a bit fragile. But we don't want any sort of like crunch to them at all. So let's try and get this done. Now we gotta let them cool for a minute. Cool enough that we can handle, but we want it to still be a little bit warm so they sort of suck up the powdered sugar. We're gonna coat them twice. Once when they're warm to kind of like let them absorb it, and then another time when they're completely cool to have that nice kind of fresh powdered sugar on there. So we're just gonna leave these alone. These cooked for about 15 minutes. I think they're perfect. Aim for about 15 minutes, depending on the temperature of your oven. If you know it's weaker or stronger, or if it's convection, just try and adjust it based on that. While they're still hot, give them a little coat. So these guys have pretty much cooled down completely. We're gonna give them its second and final coating and then get them in their cookie tray. Cookie tin, festive paper, "15 minutes is the right amount of time." This is my favorite Christmas cookie recipe, probably because of the powdered sugar, but the nuts are so good. It's got a texture that's really nice, and they sort of melt in your mouth. Now this is a tiny cookie tray, and if you see I stacked them on top, it sort of sits on top and melts some of the top. So the way you prevent that is by putting it in, measure the bottom of the cookie sheet and just cut out some of these rounds. And then the parchment paper is gonna protect the cookies, and then you can just add another layer on top. So like I said, 15 minutes is good. It sort of creates this texture that is firm. You know, it's not soft in the middle like a chocolate chip cookie. It's firm in the middle, but it's tender. It sort of melts away. So it's like, it's a fine line between overcooking it and undercooking it. You got them in their cookie tray, nice and tight, airtight, because you know, you want to be able to eat these throughout the next couple of days, weeks, and you know, you want to keep them nice and fresh for the jolly old big guy, because you know, he's got to have his, and that's a big thing. So we want to make sure Santa has good cookies, want to make sure the family has good cookies, and that's just the, you know, part of Christmas. So now that we got the cookies out of the way, next episode we're getting into the meal. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Excited for this time of year. I've been waiting all year. Christmas music is playing. Been waiting to use that. And being the season, I wanted to get a couple things out of the way. I wanted to talk about how you could support the show this month. It's getting down to the end of the year. You gotta start preparing for tax season. You know Uncle Sam takes his. And as you know, I fund the show out of my pocket. It can get pricey, so any way you can help support what I'm doing so it can sort of develop into what I hope it can, there's a couple ways you can help. In the description, I have links to my Amazon store, lots of tools and stuff like the baking sheet. It's a big time of year to kind of like restock on things, so if you need stuff, click through the link. Anything you buy after you enter through my link, I make a little bit of money off of. It's at no cost to you, so if you're buying stuff on Amazon, feel free to click through the link and see what I got in my store. I have merchandise. This is something, got another hoodie right here. Different styles, mugs, grocery totes, pillows, stuff like that. Just fun stuff, and I think these are actually pretty cool. You could support me on Patreon. You can kind of give it as much money or as little money as you want. If you spend $50 supporting me, then I'll make a recipe dedicated to you on the show. I'm excited for this month. I hope you are too. We're gonna get you ready for Christmas, hopefully like we did for Thanksgiving. So that's all I have, and until next time, take care of yourself and go feed yourself.